Project, and today's focus is going to be on a very interesting topic. And the topic today is going to be about why cryptocurrency investors will find that the work that we do here on the USD Project, it will be a great help to the cryptocurrency community. And we very much need the cryptocurrency community to go help us get the word out on issues that will face real people, and that includes, it'll come back and help cryptocurrency investors. So we'll kind of go through that today, and that's what today's podcast is about. And so all podcasts at the USD Project will kind of go through topics, and we'll end up creating a video that goes and explains this in a little bit more succinct way. And the great part about the podcast is behind the scenes, we go through and we describe it in far more detail. And we want it to be a once a week event, Wednesdays at 9:30 Pacific, for people to come in and sort of have back and forth discussions on our Reddit and Twitter. So, cryptocurrency investors, this is why we're really important to cryptocurrency investors and how we can grow the cryptocurrency investors' investment. And the USD Project will do that pretty directly. Even though our interest is a little bit different, it will end up feeding off of each other. So that is the topic for today. So for cryptocurrency investors, we'll go through an analogy I use, which is that long ago, before the internet was in homes with broadband, there were dial-up modems. And so with the Gartner hype cycle, and a lot of people in strategy know this, is that early on, when there's not broad adoption, early in the phone days, if there's nobody with a phone you cared about, you don't care about a phone yourself because you have nobody to call. So when there's times when the adoption is not spread to the point where the market becomes very much an early adopter market and not as sustainable. So that early phase is when you need to go through a hump of broad adoption before the value becomes mass market. So in the phone days, early adopters had phones, but they could call almost nobody. They had to survive during this kind of hype cycle where the early adopters would get the phones. They can call each other. That could add just enough value to get the early adopters to fuel the first spread of value. Then once a bigger, broader market had people to call, they start to go buy phones in large quantities. Then suddenly you had this huge spread. So this happened with the phone system, it happened with email, and on broadband, it was dial-up modems, and they were painful for a YouTube business model or a Netflix business model. So what we're doing here in cryptocurrency is we're early in two stages. So we're farther along for cryptocurrency for investors. If you look at Coinbase with over $1 billion a year in fees, they're having enough scale that we've gone through enough of the kind of hype cycle that we have a good amount of spread of cryptocurrency investors. And you have concrete proof in the market with over $1 billion in fees in Coinbase, and then Binance is also up there. And so that shows that the investor side of cryptocurrency is farther along. Now, it still hasn't gone mass market yet. The usage of cryptocurrency is really the big issue, is for cryptocurrency to be used as a currency. We're far earlier in the cycle, and that kind of shows more the red than the green. So, and cryptocurrency investors are probably somewhere in the green, maybe early in the green. Cryptocurrency for consumers using as a real currency is in the red, maybe really early in the red. So us at the USD Project, we care about something, which is money printing in a currency will then force a pay decrease for workers. So if inflation is 8% or 10% year over year, they've negotiated their salary in the first year. People often stay at a job for 10 years or sometimes 15 or 20 years. They don't have the power to go negotiate full pay raises to fully make up for uh, inflation that's specifically created for currencies based on money printing, plus the normal worker kind of bonus increases. So in that case, people are really getting a pay decrease. So people that had minimum wage at $7 back in the early 70s, that was had a lot more buying power many times over. Nowadays, $7 an hour, you can't pay rent and you can't go to a university like you could back then. And so it ends up being that inflation kills workers based on decreasing their wage, and then in the end, workers get hurt. So the USD project doesn't care about any of their goals necessarily. We care that citizens and workers don't get hurt in real life, and we care very specifically about money printing in the currency causing forced pay decreases to workers, and then that hurts workers. So this is one of the biggest key scenarios. So the USD project is kind of like Khan Academy. It's a big education system to go create videos and take the big market who often ignores economics, especially the deeper macroeconomic issues, and we bring them in to have great videos and a lot of other things to go learn on real scenarios that hurt them and how they as citizens can move to the ways to go fix those problems. So that is what our goal is with the USD project. So if you look down here, and I have not yet finished this slide out, but if you look down here on the bottom, what cryptocurrencies want is they want to go from X to Y to the bottom level, which is there's more cryptocurrency investors. So here, so we want to educate the mass market. So we will create education materials. What we need is everybody else to help get the word out in Reddit and Twitter and a whole bunch of other places. And the goal there is to educate the mass market and bring a lot of the videos and things that we create to big markets and have them learn. What we're having them learn is where citizens can get hurt in the real world, and then how we work on fixing that. And then down below, and most of that is where money printing causing high inflation hits real citizens in a real way. And then down below, people will turn to no money printing cryptocurrencies. So I want to kind of get to that as one of the next topics here. Is a key phrase is no money printing, basically currencies. And in the beginning here, you've got cryptocurrencies. So the part about this is really key to kind of this discussion here, and that is people have different interests in stablecoin versus Bitcoin, Ethereum, privacy coins, EOS, and then some other aspects, investment coins, security tokens and so on. So the aspect of this here is that what we should really make sure that the education towards citizens is that when you stop money printing, when you have a currency that stops money printing, then you stop inflation and the problems that all come from money printing, then suddenly that kind of a currency is the fix. So the USD project will debate the little pros and cons between an asset-backed coin and not, about Bitcoin, Ethereum, EOS, and the benefits there of there's no building the storm to go have government destroy it and force citizens back on a money printing currency. They'll be able to debate that versus asset-backed, offline, real-world asset-backed, having some benefits there. So we will debate all of these issues. The part that's really, really important for the cryptocurrency investors, it doesn't matter if you're in Bitcoin or anything else, is still support the education, because the more we can get this education material to the big citizen mass market base, then they can come, get more educated, and then you'll end up having more citizens supporting no printing cryptocurrencies or currencies. And then that will end up just helping citizens. So we're going to go through protecting workers. And so this is a mantra that we do. And I very much want it that whenever you see this, it's very much perfect for cryptocurrency investors to kind of grow your investment. The more people care about fixing this problem, the more cryptocurrency investors market will grow. So if you take somebody and they've worked hard getting a job and getting kind of growing in that position in that company, and they got a good job, when you go through inflation here, where in the beginning their money disappears constantly as they pay for rent and food and their university bill and all that, their student loans. So the part here is that over inflation here at 9%, it'll get eaten into, and their salary can stay the same 10 or 11 years later, and the living costs can be over twice. And so suddenly they simply can't pay for rent and food. They can't pay for gas for their car. They're very, very basics. So the key for us is that we're here to help solve these problems, and that's going to be a big thing. That once we get this through with workers, then the support for no money printing currencies becomes a big factor. So here, so if you look at workers, paying 83% of taxes are paid by workers based on work income. So that's not just April, that's in 3 layers. The first layer is April 15th income tax. The second layer is what the worker sees in their pay stub when money's withdrawn, and deductions there. And then the third level is the employer contribution to their pay stub that's hidden from the worker, that's taken out from the employer before it reaches the worker and the employee contribution side. So if you look at this, here we go over. And for cryptocurrency investors, these are audiences that we'll go and reach out to. And so I want you to very much view that the more you're helping us reach this audience and get the word out, the more cryptocurrency investments will grow. And so if you look at what's called unfunded liabilities, these are real people that get hurt in a real way. We'll go through why this will resonate with citizens, and why it'll be a big way to help build a lot of momentum behind the USD project. So we'll show how the USD project works, and I will show the website right here. So the goal of the USD project, and we're loading the website here, is that people can come in here to the USD project, and when they come in, we're about going one direction. If people with USD could go fix the problems over there on that side, they could stop money printing, then suddenly they can stop inflation and problems with US dollar, and that would be really great. Otherwise, if they could go prevent shock events, and the national debt default or a national debt crisis, or kind of high inflation could be another one of those. So there's ways to possibly fix the US dollar. Many of those may be impossible to actually work in real life. But one half of the USD project is what if we explore all of those paths in a very open-minded way. So we explore those. The other side is if there was a new currency, a non-money printing currency. And so that includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, EOS, privacy coins, and other things. Then if you look at offline asset-backed currencies, that could be gold, it could be real estate, it could be basically a money market fund equivalent of investments. Then those things end up creating a great path for the citizen to deal with a non-money printing kind of currency. And that's a fully asset-backed or a cryptocurrency, no money printing. So with that path, we fully explored both those paths. And so by having an open-minded path for all citizens to come and have the mass market be educated, with us, we're very open-minded and we want to explore all paths in a very open-minded way, then citizens will just get more educated overall. And they'll become better citizens, better voters, and they'll be able to go vote and also vote with their feet on where they park their currency. And by doing this, citizens can be empowered to go fix the problem. So here, if you look at our site, the way we're designed is we're going to have packets, and we want people to sign up. It's all free, like Khan Academy. When people come in and sign up, our top toolbar up here will show the sign up process. And right now I'm logged in, but up here will be a sign up. And it's free to sign up. And then what ends up happening here when people sign up, every 2 weeks we get them a packet. And so we want people who are advanced thinkers in this space, cryptocurrency investors included, to also encourage more people in the mass market to get signed up. Instead of you having to teach them and kind of win them over one by one, if you get them signed up with us, every 2 weeks they'll get an email and a learning packet. It's all free. Then they can go watch a quick 3-minute to 6-minute video, and they'll learn the next layer of this topic. And they will be won over to care about no money printing currencies. They will care that there's real problems for them and others. They will care that they fix those, and they will care they'll be open-minded on currencies to go do that. So number 1 goes how we do it, and number 2 is save the worker, and then number 3 goes through shock events, and national debt will go into a lot. Even if you're normally not personally politically passionate about the national debt, you'll find that it's actually a very interesting thing on both sides of the political spectrum, and we'll go into that in the future. If you're a cryptocurrency investor, you'll find it's an amazing way to have people learn and care about cryptocurrency investments. So over here, number 4 is the video in the podcast that we're doing today, which is why the cryptocurrency community should care. So that's today's video. And then we actually have the USDProject Genome Project. So this is going to mirror the other genome project, which looked to decode the DNA genome of the human body. So in our case, we're solving an entire different thing. We will be painting a picture between now and 2099, and we'll go through various different aspects that'll be critical for citizens to understand, and then those will translate to them caring and viewing that moving to a non-money printing currency is an absolute critical aspect. And the US dollar could be a non-money printing currency if we, going forward, never print more money. And so the US dollar could be a fine use of that if only that happened. So next over here, and this one's a really neat one, is we have interviews with economists. So if you come in here, so Anthony Chan's a great guy, and he's chief economist at JP Morgan Chase. And so we have a full interview here. And so we have great economists, and we have interviews with them. Come and view the interviews with great people here. And let's see, back here. So we have a wiki, and then we have basically a spreadsheet, and I'll show that in a second, that goes through national currency stuff. And so some videos over here is about Libra and different aspects. So we have some interesting topics about this being debated, and certain fights with monetary, anyone involved with central banks and monetary policy debating this stuff. So I wanted to give a peek into this, which is, it's a spreadsheet, and we're making a one spreadsheet view of the national debt over time. If you're a cryptocurrency investor and you talk to people and they're not won over about moving to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, this is a pretty transformative tool. And let me explain how this works. So there's the U.S., how much the U.S. pulls in taxes and all revenues coming into the country. And then here's how much we're spending. And if we kind of zoom in here, when we go, it's like spending on a credit card. when we earn a certain amount on salary, and then we spend way more, and a lot of that goes on a credit card. In this case, 400 billion, and this year goes on, and actually the next year it's on track to be a trillion. So it's just escalating at a faster rate all the time. So the newest projection is $1 trillion in 2020 to 2020, and so this is where the nation's way overspending. It goes into national debt equivalent of credit card, and then if you look at this, the amount of inflation driven specifically by money printing, because of the U.S. debt, U.S. deficit, plus later we'll go into U.S. government obligations. So based on that, right now we're just growing the Treasury bond market. So because we grow the Treasury bond market, 0% means what's absorbing all that national debt deficit, increasing the national debt. What's absorbing it, we have somewhere for it to go. That we're able to grow the entire aggregate size of the U.S. Treasury bond market and find just a bigger market for people to buy those bonds. But when that occurs, then we don't necessarily have to print any more U.S. dollars to go pay off the deficit. And by doing that, we can kind of keep inflation low. The Fed looks good in the very short term. The Fed loves looking good. And politicians will play that until, as we're growing the Treasury bond market exponentially, you just simply get to a point where nobody will take the bonds. They just know that they'll never be paid off. And even when the interest kind of ratchets up, that'll just compound the exponential growth of it. Once we go from a pretty low 2.5%, having to pay a return on those Treasury bonds for people to take them, once that starts to ratchet up, 5% to 8%, you get this exponential growth of the problem. The balance you have to pay just becomes a big problem. So right now, where it's like a very shallow credit card, very low interest rate credit card, it becomes like a normal credit card in such a huge amount of national debt compared to our income. When our national debt's over 20 trillion, and our revenues are 3.3 trillion billion. Let's see, 3.3 trillion versus national debt at over 20 trillion. It's like a worker making $50,000 and their credit cards over $1 million. You get to a point where you just can't pay the interest on that. So as the interest is growing on the national debt, and then it's being kind of absorbed by growing the Treasury bond market, it'll hit a wall at some point where people just simply won't buy more Treasury bonds. And we just can't make the interest rate high enough. It'll just cause hyperinflation by itself. But there'll be a point where we just hit a wall, and politicians will ideally try to get half paid by Treasury bonds, half by money printing. But the way politicians misbehave is they're going to try to go a couple extra years on just going with only growing the Treasury bond market, not money printing. But once they just get to a point where the market just shocks them and simply won't buy more Treasury, won't allow the aggregate Treasury bond market to grow, then the next year they have to do money printing to pay for all of the interest on the national debt. And so when it grows exponentially, and then you got to pay for that interest, it could be a shock event. So we're going to have the next month or two go through a big debate on analysis on U.S. Unfunded government obligations, and this number will sways things a lot. So we'll go through big debates over finding the true value and how much interest has to be paid yearly on whatever this number is. But if it ends up being 180 trillion on the U.S. unfunded debt unfunded obligations, that's beyond national debt. If it's something on a high order, once we have to pay interest on that, when you go to money printing, you can end up having to go print out of all dollars in existence, M1 or M0 or monetary base. Once you've got to go print 275% more dollars, then suddenly you have an issue where inflation will just be a huge issue. So you can get 275% more inflation, just because by the time we delay and have to shift to money printing instead of growing the treasury bond market, the inflation will just ratchet up at such a huge ratio for first number of years that it will be an absolute destruction or a shock event. So if citizens are moving off to a no money printing currency, all of this is avoided. So when you have the nation have 5% move off to no money printing currency, and then they have almost none of this problem, then you have 10% and 30% and 60%, then they are avoiding it for the dollars, the cash they already have. So their bank account and their no money printing currency will avoid this problem entirely. So if they sell their house or a car and take a year to go buy a new one, if they stick it in a no money printed currency, they'll skip this inflation problem. But the people with US dollars will be absolutely decimated, and they will be looking to move off US dollars like in a heartbeat. We'll go debate this number, and it's likely to be smaller, and then this impact will be smaller. But we're still talking about, even if it's a 50% money increase of real dollars going in the market chasing real goods, you'll have a pretty big inflation impact pretty directly. And you'll see citizens have a massive change over a currency. So we'll go through this with USDProject, and there's a whole bunch of deep issues with this. So we're about having citizens make it easy to ramp up to these issues, but then we dive into these serious issues. So if you're a cryptocurrency investor, definitely advocate people come to our site, have them sign up for the every 2 weeks receiving a packet, and then when you can possibly post our videos or anything else on Reddit, we would love that, or go have tweet discussions on this. So if you want to debate a different aspect of this, please have tweet debates on this, and we want to have this kind of coverage. So if you look at that unfunded U.S. government obligations. So we're going to bring in certain audiences, big audiences by the millions, who will be very hurt directly. So if you look at U.S. federal workers and their retirement fund, they've been paying into their quote-unquote retirement fund. The money's been stolen out the door by politicians and spent immediately, and left with a pile of IOUs. And the technical term for that is a U.S. unfunded obligation. And so cities are having to work hard to actually be financially really backed in this. But the federal level, they have politicians just basically stealing the retirements and leaving IOUs. So when you get to the point where a massive money printing happens, the hope that they will ever get paid back starts to become a percentage that starts to drive to 0% chance of being paid back, or they get paid back in worthless dollars. And so we're talking about millions of workers who worked for decades hard. They worked hard for decades, and they deserve to have a retirement fund. They've paid in and earned it. And then when the literal system that backs that up has been stolen out and turned into IOUs, we'll go through with that in very in-depth discussions. And what's interesting is when they fix that, literally make it move off of US dollars and off of treasury bonds that back this, then they're converting it away from IOUs back into real obligations. That will greatly shrink the US treasury bond market, and then suddenly cause a huge problem. Then shift us into money printing and all that. So it'll be a wild ride, and we'll model this out, but we're dedicated to hearing from you and getting your discussions in. So if you're a cryptocurrency investor, the more you pull in any of these audiences, we'll take them through the process of getting educated on the real issues. Once they come in to go fix their retirement fund, it'll come back to just having to go address this issue, that we will effectively have a necessity for people to move over to a no money printing currency, because too many people will get hurt otherwise. So U.S. federal workers are just millions and millions of people that will be hurt by the retirement fund never paying them out in any retirement. So the U.S. military, their retirement fund is also a U.S. unfunded obligation. So their money they paid in for decades while working, then it turned into a pile of IOUs because politicians spent it immediately. And then Social Security retirement fund, it's again unfunded obligations. And you look at Medicare, Medicaid, and same thing. So we'll come through and have big discussions. So we'll talk about stable money. We'll talk about various aspects here. People getting hurt by inflation. We'll talk about alternative currencies, preventing bubbles in business cycles. Oftentimes, when you abuse currencies, that can happen. We'll talk about malinvestment. So, here is another aspect. You'll learn more about this when you come to us. Shadowstats.com is a great site. The government says that we're at 2% year over year inflation for the last decade or two, but they really rigged that as kind of a lying value because for many, many, many decades, for most of the last 100 years, we were on a system that measured real consumer price index on when people living their life have real costs increased. We would have this consumer price index to measure inflation. In the early 80s, you see the inflection point right here. Before that, there was real inflation hitting people because expanding money supply does that. By the 80s, in order to lie about that, then they would create and shift off to measure metrics that are just measuring some stuff on business or things that won't have inflation, and then they can go lie about a 2% number, the number in red. But Shadow Stats is great about tracking the consumer price index, the same one that we've always used, and shown that our real inflation is around 8 to 10% every year recently. So this is before we have any of those impacts on, treasury markets kind of capping out, interest on the treasuries having to go increased, people with unfunded liabilities stopping using treasuries as much, and all those things. Those will greatly cause inflation to go higher even more. But this is impacting citizens today. So real workers are getting real pay decreases on an inflation-adjusted basis because their rent's going up, their gas costs are going up, everything they pay for is going up at more of an 8% price because it's being hit by this and because of all these issues. And all these issues go away with a no money printing currency. So Zen Ledger is a cryptocurrency tax system. It's like TurboTax, but for cryptocurrencies. It's the leading system out there. It will go read in from all exchanges and private wallets, desktop wallets. It'll complete your cryptocurrency taxes and just within a few minutes output 49 forms that go straight in your taxes. So Zen Ledger is the leading way to do your cryptocurrency taxes, and cryptocurrency taxes is going to be a big strategic issue, and we'll go into that in many ways. So we have a page on our site. Come to USDProject.crypto/taxes, and this will be something that how policy is changed by people will be a strategic thing for citizens to navigate in order to make the system work. So this is the USD project. This is our podcast, and as you've seen it, I've went through and recorded a video. In this case, it's the shaping of this video I'll be creating. And with this, it's this is what our podcasts are about. So come join them. Come join our Reddit. We have debates there. We want you to come in and post and discuss and debate. Come to our website. Advocate it to other people outside of cryptocurrency. We got a YouTube channel full of videos. So we're great at creating lots of videos. It's a great way to take even the mass market and have them ramp up into these issues, let them learn about economics and why they should care a lot. And then we're on Twitter. So please contact us and help us debate these issues. Thanks. Bye.